Welcome, everyone. Um, Before we start talking and introducing ourselves, we will have room for that. Who here knows what a Kubernetes Steering Committee is? Dims, you have to raise your hand. Okay, cool. For those of you that are not fully aware how the Kubernetes steering works, the first thing that I will clarify is we are not responsible for for technical direction of the project. We do not decide what the project is working on. Even when sometimes we are talking about the technical side of things, that's because a lot of us are from the community, from people who are working on Kubernetes on a daily job. We have some opinions. But as a general rule, we are only here to handle SIG creations, work group creations, making sure everyone within the community are abiding by all the laws that we set up, and which basically means that we have to be nice to one another. And we are overlooking the entire thing. So the three of us are previous steering members, but so that you can have a little bit better idea of who we are, we'll start with short introduction. So Nikhita, go ahead.
Hey everyone, I'm Nikhita. I'm a principal engineer at Broadcom. I was also a part of the Kubernetes Steering Committee from 2019 to 2021, so it's been a while. I've had to refresh my memory, but you all can answer the questions probably better than me. But yeah, I've been part of the Kubernetes Steering Committee, contributed to Kubernetes. I was a technical lead for SIG contributor experience. The vice chair of the CNCF Technical Oversight Committee. So this deals with not just Kubernetes, but the CNCF ecosystem. And then I was also a chair for the global KubeCons until Delhi.
One short notice, who here uses CRDs? Nikhita is one of the main authors behind CRDs, so she was very shy not to mention this, but she is one of the authors. That's how her journey with Kubernetes started with.
Thank you.
Nabarun?
Hi, I'm Nabarun. I work as a principal engineer at Broadcom. I have been contributing to Kubernetes for the last 5 or 6 years, I guess. I started with the Kubernetes release team. I led Kubernetes 1.21 release team, I think, 4 years back. I hope that nobody is using 1.21 anymore. But if you do, please do upgrade. Upgrades are easier these days. Apart from that, I'm also one of the co-chairs of SIG contributor experience. I also contribute to the CNCF ecosystem as a technical lead for technical advisory group operational resilience. And I was on the steering committee between 2022 and 2024. So my tenure ended last year. So happy to be talking about some of the past, present, and future of how steering works. And I think you had one more question, like why did I decide to run for the steering committee?
Yeah, so my name is Maciej. I'm from Poland. I've been working on Kubernetes all the way since 2014. I actually had to check this morning. My first contribution was in December 2014. I was bumping SPF Cobra library back then. That was my first contribution because we cared for a fixed to Kubernetes. And my journey with Kubernetes started then, and I was touching literally every piece of code because I wrote a significant portions of the jobs and cron jobs controller. I was helping the original auditing that does not exist anymore with Kubernetes. I wrote that one and helped design the current auditing mechanism, was helping with a lot of the API things. Over time, with my contributions, I earned the leadership role for SIG CLI. So if you use kubectl and if you complain, I'm sorry. Find me after the talk and we can discuss options. And after a couple more years, I got involved with SIG apps and became a lead for SIG apps as well. You can also find me with the batch working group as a continuation of the SIG apps role. Currently, after multiple discussions with various people, Nabarun and Nikhita included, I got I ran for steering 2 years ago and got elected. And this is like this year currently is when my current term ends. As an interesting add-on, we have steering elections happening every single year. Steering committee comprises of 7 people, and we are swapping 3 or 4 people every single year, such that the newcomers into the steering committee can learn from the folks who are already serving and are halfway through. So we will be running elections in the upcoming weeks. So hopefully this session will be able to help you either decide to run for steering or help you make your mind when you will be deciding who to vote for during the next elections.
I just wanted to add on to that. So the part about like why did you decide to run for the steering committee? That's an interesting one for me because back in when was that even 2018 or something? I was the technical lead for SIG contributor experience, but I was mainly focused on like also SIG API machinery at that time, but I was mainly focused on a few SIGs. Since I was also part of contributor experience, that kind of touches all the other SIGs, but never really thought of signing up for the steering committee. I think at that time it was like, Dims, you were part of it, I think. There were like a lot of heavyweights, Joe Beta, Brian Grant, and a lot of other folks who were like founders of Kubernetes and so on. And I really didn't think I qualified. But one of the community leaders, Jay Singadumas, so they messaged me and they like, I need to ask you a favor. And I was like, sure, what's that? And they said, I need you to run for the steering committee. And at first I thought it was a joke. I brushed it off, but then they had to follow up with me again just to make sure like, hey, are you doing this or not? So I think, and that turned out really well. Like I applied, I ran for the election. Actually didn't get it through the first time. The second time it worked out. So I see a lot of maintainers in this room. I hope you are running the next time and in the next election. And I want to see at least one of you all on part of the steering committee. Already looking at you, Priyanka.
Okay, so as we were saying, the 3 of us were either are currently on the steering or were in the steering. So the question that I know that the steering is being asked about it very frequently, literally every single time we're having any kind of AMA for steering, the question is usually, or when talking in private about your impressions being on the steering or when running for steering, there's usually a question, what are the things that the steering deals with? There are a lot of things that we unfortunately cannot speak in public, but there are certain areas of problems that we can at least shape up and figure out and talk about and present as what are the opportunities for the person running for steering or being a steering, and what are the challenges. So Nikhita, I want to start with that one.
Sure. I think at that time, at least, the biggest challenge for me was getting used to how you are literally the face of the Kubernetes project. Kind of defining how you represent Kubernetes in terms of like PR, like public relations kind of work. There were like major crises happening all over the world at that time, and how you like what stance does the Kubernetes project take? How public are we about it? And like everyone has divided opinions about a lot of things going on, and how do you make sure that you are being neutral, but you're also supporting the right causes? There's like a ton of things that's happened. I don't want to take names of the situations that we faced, but like wrapping your head around how to navigate those situations, that's hard. I think most of us are engineers and none of us have a lot of experience on these things. So getting used to that was the biggest challenge. There's a ton of other things, but I'll let you all go first.
This is a very tough question, actually. So in the 2 years that I served on the steering committee, as Nikhita mentioned, like there are a lot of decisions or hard challenges that you face, and it's often about like consensus building. There might be some things which come to you or thrown at you which you feel like is good for the community, but then at the end of the day, there will be a major set of people like disagreeing with you. Like, so those are the things that the committee as a whole need to try to diffuse and make sure the community agrees and goes forward. Like there have been instances where we were running certain initiatives, like let's say sub-project leads, but I think that was one of the least controversial during my tenure. We just wanted to introduce sustainable ladders into the maintainer ladder. Like if you are there in our talk yesterday of Contribex maintainer track, you'd see like Jason was talking about like one contributor ladder. We added a certain part. Now, these kind of things take time. Like I felt like consensus building and trying to make sure like all stakeholders are heard and they feel present in the conversation. That's a good challenge that we have in steering committee.
For me, the biggest challenge was actually before I went to the steering committee, because I've been talking with multiple folks that I should run for steering, and I'm like, I don't think I'm ready. I'm not the right person to actually hold the role. I've always looked up to Nabarun, Nikhita, Dims, Joe, Clayton, and so many others who were initially bootstrapping the steering committee and were in the next elections getting elected into steering, and I've never felt like I'm the right person for the role. But after multiple conversations with various people within the community, and especially with the prior steering members, I decided to run for it, and I got in. And I would say the biggest opportunity that I had while being on steering is to learn how to negotiate with others, because like Nabarun said, I thought like coming up with a decision within like 7 people, that's easy. But surprisingly, with the variety of people representing the steering committee, we currently have 2 members in US, 3 members in Europe, or maybe 4, and Paco in China. And surprisingly, each of us has a different perspective at certain events. Each of us will usually focus on the problems that are the closest to us. So people in US will focus on the US facing problems. Folks in Europe will focus on the European problems. And folks in Asia will focus on the problems that they are aware, that they are learning from other contributors around them, because they are a representatives of the people who actually voted for them. So that I found both challenging, but also a perfect opportunity for growth for myself and other steering members, to be able to properly respond to every single situation that was arising. And we've had various things happening. One reason that I can actually speak publicly about, and you probably heard about it, was the Slack thing from like over a month ago. That was very challenging, and the worst part on top of it was how quickly we actually have to react, because other times we have plenty of time to discuss. And one of the things that I learned from previous members, and Dims is one of them, is take your time. If something is happening, if a problem is being raised to you, take your time before you actually make a decision. And on top of that, make sure that all 7 of you agree on decision. If there's at least one objection, you should not act on it. And either you need to come to a conclusion so that the objection is neglected or is not a thing anymore, or you actually have to resolve the problem behind that thing. So it is a challenging role, but it's also a perfect opportunity for growth. If you're interested in this kind of like political / human skills area, which I believe each and every single one of us should aspire to as we're growing as as engineers, as people, and as community members. Okay, let's jump over to the next one. What advice do you have for the upcoming steering committee elections for both the candidates and the voters? Because I know that that's a challenging thing. You're seeing bios of 10 people, 15 people. It seems, oh, I don't want to read through them. I'll just vote for the ones that I know. That's not always the best option. So what kind of advice do you want to have for both the ones that are running and for the voters? Nabarun?
Okay, so there are two sets of questions here. So if you are running for the steering committee elections, it's a great thing. And I think to even like make your decision more strong, you should talk to an existing steering committee member if you're comfortable sharing about your intent to run. And it's very important to know like what is going on, and they can share you more insights on their challenges and experiences over time on how they felt being on the committee. That's one. And for the voters, I'll get to some voter stats. So the Kubernetes steering committee voting stats are actually public, but if you see the patterns of voting, this is where like Maciej's point is comes up, like don't vote for the person, don't vote just for the person that you know amongst the candidates. You should go look at all the candidate biographies. People take a lot of time to write those, put their references, what they have done in the community, the links, how they have been involved in the community. Do a little bit of research on whether they are the correct fit for the role or not. Don't just vote for your friends. There have been patterns where, okay, if I see a friend in the candidate list, I just vote for them and no opinion for the rest. That's not how you should cast your vote. Bear in mind, voting for the steering committee elections just doesn't come for free. You need to have at least 50 contributions done in a year to be even eligible for a voter, being in the voter list, which is like an important bar. So if you are given that franchise to vote, do exercise that cautiously. So I think like the candidate part, like people can elaborate more, but the voting aspect is often neglected. And when we see the list, it is always something of those sorts. People just vote for people who work in the same company and then ignore all others. They don't have any opinions for the other candidates. Whereas it's not that like 0 or 1. It's always something in the middle. And you should take a look at all the candidates qualitatively.
I kind of have some advice building up on that, and might be unpopular. What we have seen in the past is that voters typically vote for candidates from their own company or their friends and so on, or people from their own region, like that. We've also seen that happening. So as a candidate, like this is going to happen. We will recommend, we will suggest it to voters, like don't do that, but it's going to happen nevertheless. So what will make you stand out is if you are already a visible public figure in the Kubernetes project itself. And how you can do that is through working through multiple SIGs. So like whatever your contributions are there, it's fine if it's related to a single SIG, but what makes you stand out and be more visible in the community is if you're working across multiple SIGs. I think each one of us has been involved in various SIGs when we stood for the election. So I think that's the biggest one. And the second one is write good bios. I think that really matters. I've seen a lot of candidates, they don't put in a lot of work for defining what they actually want to do as part of the steering committee. It sounds cool. It's probably just like the right next step for them. But then writing it down, like what you actually want to do, makes you realize like, hey, do you even know what the steering committee does? And where you can actually contribute the most value.
Just one thing
on
the bio. The bio has a character limit. You can only put in like 1,000 characters or I think 300 words. So people need to be very cognizant of what they write in their bio. It just can't be something like random thing you did not for the community like 5 years back. It doesn't matter to people that way. So when the voters read the bio, they will not get any information about you. So you have to write something which is very relevant to the context of the election.
I will build a little bit more on what Nikhita was saying, where you want to be visible across the project. It's also important still to keep in mind that the steering committee role is not a technical role. Oftentimes in the past elections, what we've noticed all is that we as a community are picking the people who are coding the most PRs, the most submissions or most reviews. But we should all ask ourselves, is that person that is focusing primarily on the code? I know he's working across the entire project, from SIG networking all the way down to SIG node, touching API and kubectl and all that. Yes, he's visible, but can that person be actually a person that will be able to respond to any crisis regarding the project, like the Slack thing that happened recently, or similar more or less political opinions, because steering committee was asked about having an opinion about those as well in the past years? Is that person will be able to discuss concretely with other steering members what the role of the project should be? The person should be open to making very tough decisions against the tide of popular opinions. And for example, Jiffy was talking yesterday during the maintainers meetup. Who was here at the maintainers meetup yesterday? So Jiffy was talking a lot about, we have to be strict with regards, for example, people who are not contributing to Kubernetes or any other project per se. We should be removing them from Kubernetes organization in our case. This is not a popular opinion, but you have to be ready to make that kind of a decision and stand by it as a member of a steering committee. Whether that will be splitting the role of chairs and technical leads, which took Nabarun almost 2 years to push through, and similar changes that are affecting multiple people. Some of them will be okay with that, but there will be others who will be opposing you, and you have to be ready to respond to that. So the people that we are choosing have to be capable of standing by their decision and convincing others. So that will be one of the things that I would say it's both important for the candidates when they are running, that they have to be ready to make those decisions, but also for the voters. If you know that a person is submitting code, but you know that they can convince you to a decision that they are trying to force through, that's an important question that builds on what Nikhita and Nabarun were talking about. Put a little of effort by checking who the person is, what kind of contributions they've done, where they have made it. Read through their proposals, their bios, and as a candidate, try to focus on the impactful things that actually affect the project as a whole, not necessarily focusing on the code aspects. It's not an easy thing. I'm well aware of it. What does help is, in my case, I can speak for myself. In my case, for my initial bio and my initial issue, which proposed me as a candidate, I had a friend of mine reaching out that he wants to write a proposal for me. And I'm like, dude, you are actually interested in doing this? And I was sure that he's gonna just write a couple of words, cool. He wrote like a big blog post, how he is where he currently is thanks to me. And I'm like, I'm gonna print it and put it on my wall, because frame it and put it on my wall because it's so amazing. I would never thought about myself this way, where he wrote it. So he looked at me from a completely different perspective. If you have a friend like that, go ask him. Maybe he can do that thing for you, which will be better because he will look at this thing a little bit more objectively. Okay, we're still like 5 minutes. Cube is 10. Everyone are asking 11. True. Everyone are asking, what's next? What's next? I'm still asking that myself, and I have no idea. But let's try with Nikhita and Nabarun, or what the future holds.
AI. I think that's an easy answer. No, but seriously, I think Kubernetes 2.0. No, that was a joke. No, but I think AI, right? Like we're seeing a massive shift across the ecosystem around new developments coming in, and I think both of you can speak more about what's been going on in the project in the AI space. I'll let you all speak to it.
I'll address the joke bit once. Like there was a question about Kubernetes 2.0 yesterday, and someone just walked up to us and asked like, "I'm hearing rumors about Kubernetes 2.0. Is it really going to happen?" My next question was like, "Where are you hearing the rumors? That is like a foregone conclusion at this point that there is no Kubernetes 2.0. When you consume any minor version of Kubernetes, it's essentially a major version with all the changes coming in. Like there is Kubernetes 2.0 probably is some other project which somebody might build. So just addressing it. Dims has something to say.
We might have a Kubernetes 1.99.
We might have 1.99, and I hope we have 1.999 as well, if we survive any apocalypse. But keeping jokes aside, I think AI is going to be a big mover in the community. Like in the last month, we had like 3 or 4 working groups coming up in the intersection of AI, and there has been like lots of discussions like on like whether the working groups are relevant or not, what are they going to achieve. Even today morning, I saw one email in a thread where there's still not consensus on like what one particular working group is going to do. I feel like we as a community in the future will embrace more of AI and will try to build more policies on how Kubernetes embraces AI and how maybe in the community also we use AI to sustain our developers.
There's also like features like DRA
Yeah.
that we're working on in the Kubernetes project to support AI workloads. I think supporting AI workloads is going to be the next big thing.
I remember a year and a half, 2 years ago, sitting, I don't know how I ended up, but I ended up sitting at a meeting with high execs at one of the companies. I will not name those people. And I'm hearing that, oh, Kubernetes will be irrelevant. We'll start something from scratch, rewrite it. And I'm like, yeah, right. We're 11 years in, plus a couple more months what happened internally at Google. There's so many months that has been put in, so many sweat and tears and sleepless nights and whatever else that people have put into the Kubernetes, and we're staying so strong. The most important thing, we are able to adapt in a similar way how Linux is adopting. Obviously, it's not the same Linux that Linus Torvalds wrote and published in the mailing list, which was like, I don't know, I remember Red Hat had like big poster, which had entire Linux kernel. I cannot imagine anyone printing Linux kernel these days within like single page, unless it's like 0.00001 font or something like that. And they are changing, they are adapting. Kubernetes is so ubiquitous by now that I cannot imagine the project not being around and not being relevant. Of course, there will be challenges. The challenges are in front of us every single day, whether that will be organizational challenges, whether that will be technical challenges. But because we have such a great people building in this community, so many newcomers, old-timers, and a perfect mix to make sure that the project will thrive and will serve no matter what kind of workload, whether that's AI, whether that's something else. Think of whatever you can, and Kubernetes will be able to do it because it is de facto the standard way to do it. One more slight interesting aside. I was sitting at one of the early KubeCon in Europe with Janet Kuo. Janet is my co-chair for SIGAPS. And the speaker was talking about YAML being the new assembly. And the two of us were sitting there and like, do you feel like you're writing assembly? And I'm like, no, it's not that bad. 10 years in, I know that Joe complained about it multiple times. He still has amazing presentation about how bad YAML is. There are projects. There's an alpha feature coming in 134 about KYAML, which is like slightly improved YAML, but not a bunch. And I've already heard quirks about that too. But we are slowly adapting and trying to improve. Of course, it won't be the pace that we had 10 years ago, where we were able to rewrite half of the kube or rename nodes from minions, or who here remembers that kube? What was the kubectl name before kubectl has happened? There was a kube CFG. So yeah, a lot of things have changed, and the pace is different. Yes, the process is harder. The caps are long. The PRR approvers, me being one of them, are picky. They ask hard questions. They demand answers. But that's because like half of the internet, if not more, depends on the project. So if you're always in doubt why you're being asked a question, like, because half of the internet is relying on the project. And I think with that, we can close the call almost on time, a little bit over. Thank you.
We can have questions async.